I would tell my wife, imagine how draining it is that God gave me a promise, right? He gave you a promise. You believe the promise, but you don't know how the promise is going to come to pass. And so every time you meet somebody, you're thinking, okay, Lord, is this the person that's going to help me? Okay, is this the situation that's going to get me where I'm trying to go? And you lose the opportunity for genuine
Mm,
relationship because you are getting out in front of God. You don't necessarily mean to get out in front of God, but you're taking off, and it's like, no, I was just letting you meet them because that's just a nice person and it's good to know
right.
them. But you're thinking about architecture for this big vision that he has for you. And so what I've learned to do is to give up control.
Hmm.
And then when we talk about even the story, it seems like as I look at the story is people that were trying to be in control over what
Yeah.
God of
Yeah.
our promise that
Yeah.
God had given, as opposed to just being like water and trusting that
And let it
it's gonna
flow.
Mm,
flow how it
yeah.
meant to flow.
I think you said something very key, MeiAngelo. And where seems to be a theme of God calling you within yourself, right? And I sort of feel the same way, which is that the things God has called me, has told me, and the promises He's made for me, they're not going to require me to move outside of where I would move anyway if I'm in Him, right? And we can see that in the story of Abraham and Sarah, right? When Sarah convinces Abraham to lay with Hagar, he's moving outside of what he would normally do. He wouldn't normally do that. And so God knows who you are. And as long as you walk the path He's called you to walk, the way He's called you to walk it, you'll end up where you're supposed to be and where He's called you to be. I always have this theory. I try not to focus on where I'm going. I try to focus on where I place my feet. If my feet are always on the path, I'll end up where I'm supposed to go.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's hopefully a good way to go where God would have us to go and become who God would have us to become.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. So when we look at the story, and we can sympathize with Sarah a bit because she had already waited over 60 years. She
Yeah.
had already believed in and trusted God for other things, but for this, she had completely given up hope. And for God to come to Abraham and say that this thing will happen, so we can kind of understand why she would be impatient or why she would think that she had to do something else. Um, and so she did. And for 13 years, she thought that her plan had worked. She raised Ishmael. Hagar was there, whatever differences they may have had during her pregnancy. We don't know exactly how that played out, but we do know that she was still there. And Ishmael was a part of their family for 13 years. And then
Yeah.
here comes God saying, "What did I tell you?" So when we think about those moments of we're thinking that we gave God a plan. God told us
Mm,
something and we went a different direction. God said to be silent and we said, no, I got to be nice and nasty. I got to tell her by herself. And then we think that that plan worked. God told you to, hey, go ahead and start that business. It's like, no, I'm just going to go ahead and
mm,
finish this career out for another 5 years. And we start to elevate in our position. So things happen and we think that we have made our plans work. So thinking about your marriage, your parenting, your careers, where have you seen God have to come back to you and say, daughter, son, what did I tell you 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago?
Oh, where all the women of excellence, all my ladies say, what not, say, what.